Hello and welcome to Editorial, the podcast where we discuss everything we've got wrong. As always, I'm joined by TLDR's editor-in-chief, Zach Makeda.
Hello, hello, hello. I have notes from things we've got wrong on my phone. I'm not just being rude.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just...
You could be both. You could be rude and looking at your notes too. But how much have we got wrong, Zach, in the last 2 weeks?
So we are, again, we've done this when we're supposed to do this. So it has actually only been 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And that means, that's the main reason, there haven't been that many videos that have fallen below that classic like-dislike threshold of 96%. Although, one important caveat here, basically every Trump-related video does fall below that threshold, but only just. I think every Trump/Musk video gets about 95, 94, 95. And I have checked them. I can't really see anything wrong with those videos over on Global. It is just because Trump is apparently a controversial figure.
Apparently,
that's what I've heard.
It's a revelation.
I didn't get it. Anyway, apart from that, we have 4 videos. Should I go from our most recent or the ones furthest away?
Let's start with the longest to go and then come.
Longest to go. That's a good turn of phrase. Furthest away chronologically is a wordy way of getting to that point.
It's a few too many words, I'd argue.
I think the first one to talk about then is the Canadian Liberals surge in the polls. Should Poilievre be worried? Which has, and slightly appalling like this ratio, 91.3.
That stinks.
I know, crazy.
What happened to it?
So I think there's 2 things. There was a sort of one. There's just a lot of Poilievre fans on the internet.
Sure.
And in that video, we're saying that his poll numbers are falling, and we also do point out that he's actually just not that popular, which is something that you probably wouldn't intuit if you're, someone who just spends a lot of time on Twitter. You probably assume that he's super popular, but actually, amongst all known Canadians, he has a negative approval rating of sort of -15.
Wow.
Yeah.
Not great.
Not great.
I mean, world leaders always have pretty bad approval ratings, but
yeah, you say that, but often in opposition, you do okay.
You'd be hoping for pretty good right now.
Yeah, exactly. When Trudeau came in, for instance, when he won in 2015, he had +20 or something like that.
Yeah, but he was so handsome.
Yeah, it's it's not this sort of podcast. He has aged actually. He has aged very well for a world leader. They always look like
It's crazy how much you age.
Hollowed out by the end.
Do you age that much because you're in politics and that ages you, or is it just everyone who enters politics? There's a lot of people who enter politics in their.
No, definitely because the job itself ages you.
You think?
Oh, 100%.
I also do just think there's a lot of politicians that enter in the beginning of the aging period. They're there's a lot of late 30s, early 40s politicians that everyone's oh, they're looking good. But it's just a bloke.
The sort of late 40s to late 50s.
And then that's just a
transition.
brutal phase.
But I just don't think that's generally true. I think that quite a lot of people age these days.
You think Obama got hit hard by the job?
Obama fared pretty well, I think it's fair to say. But he was also aged by. If you look at the before and after photos, he was probably aged by. But I think Trudeau,
comment below who's aged the best.
No, I love that. I was going to say we should move on, but this podcast has gotten...
It's fine. It's absolutely fine.
Yeah. Yeah, and then the more substantial and I think more legitimate criticism of that video was that we talked about an ECOS poll that was sort of widely mocked in Canadian politico circles because it was a bit of an outlier at the time. It was suggesting there was only sort of 5. I think there was actually 2 ECOS polls in quite quick succession. One saying there was a 7-point difference between the Canadian Conservatives and the Liberals, and one saying there was a 5-point difference between those 2 parties. Most of the other polling since then suggests that there's still a sort of 10-point difference. Okay. And those were a bit too optimistic, especially because they came out, before it was even apparent that Carney was going to be the next leader. Nonetheless, there was Angus Reid polling at the time suggesting that Carney would close the gap to about 10 points, and some polling that's come out since by a whole load of different polling companies, including Ipsos, has all suggested that actually the gap has closed somewhat, and it is about 10 points now. So the premise of that video holds up. And I think it's worth saying that we do actually mention in that video that ECOS poll should be taken with a pinch of salt because it is an outlier.
Yeah.
So I actually don't think we have anything to apologize for there.
Okay.
And I think actually that video has aged relatively well insofar as the polling that's come out since.
It's ended up being more true than it was at the time.
In a way, yeah. That or we can tell the future, one of the two.
Okay.
The next one, second longest to go, is the video we did about Milei and the Peso.
Yes. Always contentious.
Always contentious.
Milei's another one of those figures.
He is, and at 92.6.
Okay, pretty rough as well.
Yeah, pretty rough. There was one actual sort of half error in there in that we used, when we were showing the Peso, I think we used the wrong banknote. I think it was the old Peso.
Okay.
I don't think it was actually different the wrong country. We've done that before, but it was actually just the old banknote.
Sure.
Which I don't know if it's necessarily an error, but I
We should keep up to date
apologise.
with our pesos.
Yeah, why not?
We don't know our pesos.
Embarrassing.
Unbelievable.
But the more, I don't think that accounts for that doesn't explain why that video fell below threshold.
No.
I think what clearly happened again is that Milei has a lot of defenders online, and they didn't like the idea that something wasn't going right for him. But I think we should say in that video, we do say in that video that this is a very specific issue, and that the other reforms have gone pretty well, at least by his from his perspective. And I think Milei himself, I didn't know how explicitly he makes this, but it's very, very clear that he recognises this is a problem, and unifying the currencies is going to be difficult, which is why the coming IMF negotiations are so important. So I hate to do this. I don't really think we have anything to apologise for there. I can double check if we might have made a mistake.
You double check and then talk about it where? Is your podcast for your editorial on the editorial?
Yeah, so that's the Milei one.
Okay.
Then the next longest to go, Spain's economy doing surprisingly well, outperforming the rest of Europe.
Not another surprisingly.
Classic.
Whenever
People
we
hate
say
it.
that something's going to surprise people, everyone likes being like, it didn't surprise me.
I don't want to. I mean, I'm now sounding sort of unduly stubborn here, but like every time we do this, people from that country are like, "I live here." And no, it's not actually good. It's just not how data works. Like it doesn't just because your wage hasn't gone up doesn't mean that wages haven't gone up.
Sure.
The one caveat I would put in here, I stand by almost all of that video. The one caveat I would put in here, and something we maybe should have made more explicit, is that Spanish wages are still very low.
Yeah.
Spanish disposable income is still pretty meager. And maybe we could have made more of that. I mean, I appreciate that if you're talking about a big European economy, when you talk about that in those terms, it sounds like sort of, Spaniards are enjoying German wages, sort of, you know what I mean? Like Spanish households are catching up to German households, and that's just not true. Spain is just poorer than, the wealthiest European countries. Maybe we should have made more of that. But the data itself, I think it's all presented, I think is well, it's all just real, and we, it's not like we say this is the IMF. Well, actually, in that case, it's the European Commission data. And you can have a go at the European Commission, but that's what the data
not
says.
Not in our
unfortunately.
comment section, you can't. And the most recent video.
Finally, why the West has fallen out with Kosovo. That 95.2, so just below the threshold.
Could be worse.
And also, that's the Kosovo-Serbia video. Yeah, they normally have again slightly contentious issue.
Yeah.
I actually there's nothing in that, and there was quite a lot of people suggesting that it's to do with lithium. That basically the EU is buddying up to Serbia and sort of thus ditching Kosovo because there are big lithium deposits in Serbia and the EU wants to get its hands on it. I don't. We've talked about it in other videos. I'm aware of the sort of lithium mines going on. It's a big deal in Serbian domestic politics at the moment. I think it's hard to say. It's always hard to assign beliefs to big organizations like the EU. You know what I mean? People say like the EU is doing it for lithium. Well, what do you mean? Maybe some people in the EU are, maybe some aren't.
Yeah.
Maybe we could have mentioned that. I just can't give a definitive answer on that. I mean, it is true that the EU does want to do a deal with Serbia on lithium, and whether or not, to what extent that is playing into their attitude towards Kosovo, I think is no question. But I would say that I think it's definitely a side issue, and that the bulk of the tension is to do with a disagreement between the West, so the EU and the US, and Kosovo over how to treat Serb minorities in Kosovo, and the Kurti government's forward-leaning stance on those issues. But I think nothing wrong with that video. People we should have included some more stuff on the lithium stuff, but I don't really think that it's sufficiently big or clear that it's playing into the EU's decision making that it warrants an apology for not being included. So that is everything.
There we go.
I know.
Quick one.
I know.
Second quick one.
That's crazy.
Maybe
isn't
we
it?
get fortnightly too
We
regular.
could do a quickly thing. I think very quickly on the Trump stuff. Because, those are all below. I think we should just say to people, Yeah, well, I think we are going to do slightly less Trump stuff going forwards. I think that we'd obviously covered a lot of Trump since he won the election, but just the fact that like he's saying so much, but it's very hard to know how much of that actually is translating into real substantial differences in policy or outcome is hard to say. So I think we're probably take our foot off the Trump accelerator, if that metaphor makes any sense. But you see what I mean? We'll do less Trump stuff. Yeah. Going forward. So hopefully,
unless he does something really crazy. It's hard to tell.
He does a lot of saying crazy things at the moment, and then not actually much doing things.
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see, exactly.
And we'll obviously be discussing it on WTF, on their original series.
Which is written today and is out.
New episode out Friday. Today, on episode of release.
Oh, is it?
It's released on Fridays.
Wait. Oh, because it's been released on Friday, isn't it?
It's been released on Friday.
Oh, crazy.
It's crazy.
Crazy.
Time is passing. The year is flying away from us.
I know, Margot's nearly one.
No way.
Oh, what's the date? Oh, yeah, she won't be quite one by the time
the video comes out. You've forgotten her birthday.
No.
Oh, wait, it was yesterday. Well, join us again in 2 weeks' time for the next episode of the editorial, where we'll discuss Margot's birthday. What'd she get up to? Is she having a party? Actually. We'll find out.
I can do that.
And we will also discuss everything we got wrong in the last week. Maybe more importantly.
Mainly Margot's birthday.
But it's going to be a Margot's birthday special.
Yeah, I think so.
Can't wait. We have to get a reporter down there live. Trying to get in the house.
Dress up as a baby, try and sneak in.
Okay. We should stop there rather than speculating who we're going to dress up as a baby because we all know it's Ben.